literally just landed, and the government have all descended the steps as they enjoy a nice 3-day state visit. Now, everyone's wondering about Francois Hollande's love life.
Right.
Because he's obviously the bachelor president.
That's right.
He'll be sitting all alone at the state dinner tonight. But meanwhile, there are rumours and speculation circulating about an entirely different love life.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's really hard to believe, probably because it's not true, but we'll have to wait and see. But I did come across, just to give some context, the last state visit by a French president, a state dinner rather, because they're quite rare, these state dinners at the White House, was Jacques Chirac back in 1996 with Bernadette. And there's Bill and Hill, or President William Jefferson Clinton. And I suppose, it was a much more formal time during
Laura
Jacques
Bush.
Chirac's presidency. You always had the First Lady on hand. You had Laura Bush looking a bit stunned at the formality of the elegant French baisement. Although Sarkozy used to do the same thing, the hand kissing. But and we've had all of this speculation then how are they going to manage this sort of break from protocol, which is François Hollande turning up alone. For these very rare, very formal state dinners. Barack Obama has only hosted 6 in, this is his second term now in the White House. By contrast, Bill Clinton hosted 23. And indeed, Barack Obama has been criticised for the decadence of some of these state dinners, even though he's only held a mere 6. For example, inviting Beyonce along
now this
to
is the
sing
juicy stuff.
at the the state dinner when the Mexican president was invited. Now, why am I mentioning that?
Yes,
Laura?
why are you showing us pictures of Beyonce, James?
Because there have been mad rumours all over the French media today, stirred up by a French paparazzo. Let me move that page up so you can actually see what we're talking about. Beyonce and President Obama having an affair, says French photographer.
Quite a claim.
That's in Cosmopolitan. It is quite a claim. He made that claim, the paparazzo in question, over the weekend in the Swiss media. His name is Pascal Rostand. He's a well-known and sort of regarded, I suppose, are paparazzos ever well regarded? But in any case,
this
he is
isn't
since...
the chap that said recently that Liz Hurley had an affair with Bill Clinton, is it?
I don't know if it's the same guy.
Because he then said it was all nonsense and he just
well,
made
you
it
see,
up.
it's quite strange because he came out with this in the Swiss media in a newspaper called Le Matin over the weekend. Then he said it again on Europe radio this morning. He said, on the front page of the Washington Post, you're going to see this story tomorrow. Now, why would somebody do that in terms of their credibility? But he's now retracted it. It's very odd behaviour, to say the least, to say it in the Swiss media over the weekend, to say it on French radio this morning, and then a bit later on to say, actually, no.
I can imagine the blogs are going mad about this.
They are, and the Washington Post has replied. They've said, we're not working on any story of this variety. I contacted them myself. They said the same thing. Vanity Fair France spoke to the management of who formally denied it. So look, there are many sources saying that at the Washington Post, this is just being flat out denied. Now, worth mentioning that Pascal Rostand also said on Europe this morning that according to his sources, all is not completely rosy in the White House.
Well, yes, we know this, don't we?
Right, and that in fact that if a story does come out about troubles in the first couple in the US, it will only come out when all of the facts have been verified, and that they won't have the same problems that the French journalists had, because in the US you can speak about the private life of politicians.
And people care a lot more about their politicians' private lives as well. I mean, a lot of French people were fascinated by it, but it didn't really affect how they felt about Hollande.
Exactly.
They couldn't feel much worse about him.
But also, a Closer magazine who came out with these revelations about François Hollande now do risk legal action because they did speak about the president's private life. In the US, journalists wouldn't bear that same risk.
So I have to keep that. Would be pretty explosive, wouldn't it? All right. Now, what we do know is that Hollande and Obama wrote a joint piece on something slightly less interesting in the Washington Post.
We won't spend too much time on it, but I suppose the interesting element here is that everybody was expecting this to come up in the Washington Post, right, tomorrow morning. What we can confirm is the only thing in the Washington Post for now is a joint op-ed by Obama and
it's all about foreign policy,
Foreign policy, where they say everything you'd expect them to say, that they're wonderful friends for the past 200 years. There was a bit of a cooling off period, but now they're great pals again, and on all sorts of issues, they see eye to eye.
Okay, now let's talk about...
I'll just show you one thing.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just Guillaume Tessé, he's this guy on Twitter who always does these mashups, right?
Oh, no, you love these mashups,
And as you would expect, there are more, this is what we're seeing
weird.
now, which is the ultimate symbol of Franco-American friendship.
That's just horrible. Although I think it does François Hollande a few favours, actually.
This is it. I think he's coming out of it a bit better. Let's call a spade a spade, right?
I don't think Afar would be too pleased. Now, a story a bit closer to home. This is the left-leaning newspaper Libération. They're in a bit of financial bother, I understand.
That's right.
And the journalists took on the shareholders at the weekend.
It's, I think, a real sign of the times, a sign of how much trouble the print press is in. I don't have much time to go into it, but essentially on Saturday, the journalists went head-to-head with the shareholders. They said, we are a newspaper. What is all this about? Well, the shareholders of Libération, a real traditional left-wing newspaper set up by Jean-Paul Sartre in the 1970s, a famous French philosopher and existentialist.
It's a bit of an institution, isn't it?
It is an institution. They're saying it's not profitable anymore. We want to turn the city centre headquarters into a cultural centre, make it into a sort of a café de flore of the 21st century. That is the Left Bank Cafe where Sartre famously, held his, philosophical discussions with his philosopher friends. Now, the journalists are outraged. They're saying you're just trying to make Libération into a brand. You're diluting any notion of real journalism. And, of course, other people are saying, look, this is the 21st century and, new solutions need to be thought up. This is, on the right, Stefan de Vries, a Dutch journalist in Paris. He's imagining what the shareholders would reply. We are a newspaper, say the journalists. We are in the 21st century, say the shareholders.
Okay. All right, James, thank you very much indeed. That's
Thanks, Laura.
it from Media Watch. Well, it's time now for our focus report. And